words of Michelle Obama, communities, countries, and ultimately the world are only as strong as health of their women. Our next session talks about precision aging and women health, designing care pathways that evolve with life. As women move through different life stages, their health needs shift in ways that demand more personalized, predictive, and evolving care model. So for the session, I would request Ms. Misha Dange, Trustee Hill Foundation, to join us as the moderator for the session. The speakers for the session are Dr. Helai Gupta, Consultant Obstetrician and Gynecologist at Rosewalk by Rainbow Hospitals. If you can please join us on dais. Dr. Sudha Prasad, Director and Senior IVF Specialist, Matritva Advanced IVF and Training Center. Mrs. Charu Dua, Chief Dietitian and HOD, Clinical Nutrition, Amrita Hospital. Dr. Astha Diwan, Psychotherapist and Life Coach. Mrs. Seema Wilson, Journal Manager, Patient Care Excellence, Pacific One Health.
We are going to start it, I think, from Dr. Helai, who is a gynae at Rosewalk. She's a very senior consultant also with us. Dr. Helai, we all know that there is a lot of lifestyle diseases nowadays women faces, and most of the things they are not able to express, because people generally treat whether it's chronic pains or it's their PCOS issues or certain chronic health challenges, and their family and everybody else, theek hai, aisa to hota hi rehta hai, these are the part of pain, there is nothing to worry about. So first of all, I want to know whether it's underdiagnosed or it's not even taken care of. I mean, what is the issue that you think so? And secondly, I want to know whether younger women's population have also started facing those things which we in our generation used to find it like during menopausal times or hitting the late puberty.
This is a very relevant question because there is a direct causal connection between a disease being under-recognized and remaining underdiagnosed. And from public health point of view also, it's noticed that the longer a disease takes to be diagnosed, the greater is the health burden. Coming to your question, yes, lifestyle diseases are increasingly being underdiagnosed and under-recognized. It has been under-recognized obviously for lack of awareness and education, and also our social biases and systemic discrepancies. The reason for being underdiagnosed is obviously the undeniable factor, which is also very inconvenient truth, and that is the fragmentation of our database and also presence of academic silos among institutions and organizations in countries. Fortunately, with the advancement of information technology and life sciences and medical advances, these silos are breaking and patterns are emerging, and awareness is also spreading, and we are able to identify remedies, and also the implementation is underway. So to say that the diagnostic odyssey of functional diseases is coming to an end, it will be partially appropriate. But the odyssey of identifying individuals and making life changes to improve these lifestyle diseases is just beginning. And yes, you are right that more and more young Indian women between the age of 18 to 35 years are becoming more vulnerable to metabolic disorders, namely...
What would be the reason for this? I mean, why they are getting such diseases at the early stage now?
So there are two two explanations for this. The reason why it is common among Indian women, it has been attributed to our unique genetic composition, and it has been observed that Indian women, Asian women of Indian phenotype, they are predisposed to have higher abdominal fat and lower muscle mass, and we all know that these two factors are a risk factor for developing metabolic disorders. And also the reason for why it is happening at younger age is blamed on the major lifestyle shift which has happened in recent 2-3 decades. While urbanization and modernization has brought prosperity, it has affected our lifestyle adversely. And the younger women have been favored by modernization additionally because there is a greater opportunity for higher education. More and more these women, they are coming to cities and they are becoming part of workforce. And this combination of sedentary urban lifestyle and poor dietary choices and abandonment of traditional Indian nutrition, compounded by the stress of workplace environment and exposure to environmental factors.
Got it, Dr. Hilai, what you're trying to say. Yes, this is like nowadays women, they have to wear different hats. They are managing home, they are managing their career, and they are managing kids, so many things. So, and added to it, the stress factor, it really makes them susceptible.
And the impact is not only on metabolic disorders, but it is consequently affecting their reproductive health system and health span in long run. And maternal health care being a major national concern, it is time to take action at multiple levels, and there is no better time than now.
Yeah, I think preventive screening is very, very important. Rather than being reactive about the entire thing, we have to be proactive. So now coming to Dr. Sudha, who is with us, and she's a very senior IVF specialist and director at Maitritva Advanced IVF and Training Center. Dr. Sudha, you are such a senior person in the entire, if we are talking about right from adolescence to reproductive and then the menopausal stages which women goes through, and they have different problems at different stages. So, I mean, as the times are changing, people are exploring IVF possibilities, and whether it's out of medical issues or maybe to be in comfort zone. I don't know, reasons can be any, but I want to know if you can enlighten us what exactly are the risk factors associated. I mean, you have to be in what fitness of medical profile, and also is there any age limit that one should keep in consideration while actually approaching any IVF specialist?
Oh yes, thank you so much for calling me here. And I just wanted to tell you about the first IVF, that initially nobody knew that if the patient had the tubal blockade or husband is absolutely severe male factor is there, or some genetic disorder, or uterus is not there. So it may be possible with the IVF. Nobody knew about it actually. But since 1978, when the first IVF baby was born, Louis Brown in UK, so it was that early, yes. So suddenly it was a big banging revolution rather, that oh, this can happen. And now can you imagine, in today's date in India, there are more than 3,000 IVF centers at each corner of the country. And of course, every day it is mushrooming, and ICMR is trying to standardize this ART law and everything, of course. So if the patient had tubal blockade, bilateral tubal blockade, I mean, both tubes are blocked, and it is not possible to be conceived, or there is a low ovarian reserve, which I see, and Madam said just now, that lifestyle changes are there. So it is possible that due to so much of life changes and these MNCs are coming, people are not resting in the night, every time computer. So low ovarian reserve, the eggs are not there in young. I keep on seeing 25 to 30 years old patients are coming where the sperms are not adequate, the eggs are not there, and it is so difficult to counsel these people that, oh, you have to take from outside, you do not have any egg. So mindset is like this, and it is very, very shocking when you speak like this to these people. And there may be a genetic disorder, but yes, there is a revolution has occurred due to IVF, that it is possible now, because if one can do IVF if the sperms are not there, if there are 10 eggs and we get the 10 sperms, so we can do intracytoplasmic sperm injection, so patient can conceive. If there is a genetic disorder, there are chances that we will take out from the testicular tissue and we can find out that which sperm is absolutely genetically normal, and we can make them conceive. There are the pre-genetic tests also, PGT can be done, and we can take out the small cells from the embryos, and it can be done. But of course, as your question was, that when the patient is nearly 30 years old, and she has to look after the career that she has to be. It's not, why to give pressure on the females? I'm against this, that you get married and you produce children. So ovarian tissue transplantation, the oocyte freezing can be done at the certain age, and at the age of 40 she can conceive. Because those egg which has been frozen at 30 years, it will be definitely young at that very time. So there are the revolution which can happen, and now today's date, if the Mullerian duct failure, when the uterus is not developed since childhood, people are getting the uterine transplant, and it can be done. This is also possible, that we can put the embryos in that and patient can conceive with these things. So there is expansion of definitely the assisted reproduction in a many different ways. It can happen with this.
What are the risk factors which are associated, as you said, uterine
There are the
transplanted? I mean, we can go for surrogacy also for
yes.
that matter.
So risk factors are definitely there. Like patient, first you have to really make the mindset. You have to do the counseling, and you have to speak to all the sides, all the subjects, that yes, this all can happen. When we give the injection to make the egg, so chances are there the patient can have the ovarian hyperstimulation, because we do not want one follicle, one egg. We want 10 at least. So out of 10, at least 70% will fertilize, and the 5 will be probably, there will be the good embryo will be formed, and at a time we put 2, so 3 will be set for the further if the cycle fails, because 30 to 40%, and maximum in young patient it is only 70 to 80%. Still 20% are the black holes, which is not possible. So chances are there, and if you take the biopsy of those, probably out of 7 which has been looking like a very good embryos, it may be aneuploid. So 1 or 2 can be the normal one which can be transferred in the uterine cavity. This is one. And number 2, patient will get so many pricks. Naturally, for 10 to 11 to 12 days, she has to take the pricks of injections. This is also, you have to counsel them that yes, this will be possible, but please tolerate it. And then when you do the ovarian pickup, so it will be under general anesthesia or the local anesthesia, but sometimes there will be empty follicular syndrome, means no egg has been found. This is also, of course it is very rare, less than 1%, but this is also possibility. And if the blastocyst which is going to be implanted, if it is not very much there, then the problem arises. And if on that very day husband is unable to give the sample. This also many, due to stress, so much of stress is there due to this infertility. So chances are like this. So one can do the freezing. We have a very good system of doing freezing of embryos, freezing of sperms. So one cannot take any chance that eggs are in our hand, which will be live only for 6 hours. And we have to put the sperms around, or we have to give the injection of sperms in that. So naturally, if we won't get, then naturally the cycle will fail. And then on that very day when we are putting the embryos inside the uterine cavity, if the lining is not very receptive, endometrial lining is not very receptive, there should be a good blood flow, it should be very thick, and it should be absolutely receptive, then only it is possible. If it is not receptive, then the problem arises. So counseling is the best method, and we keep on doing counseling continuously to the patient, so she should be motivated and she should be happy that yes, this is possible at that very place which is she has come to. Thank
Very well said. I think she should be in that comfort zone. Then only anything
Yes.
is possible. Creation of life is so beautiful, but there are so many variability attached to it,
Yeah.
which is like mind-boggling. I'm sure you are going to deal.
Yes,
this
right,
day in and
very
day
rightly
night.
said, yeah.
Thank you. Coming to Mrs. Charu Dua, you are a chief dietitian and a clinical nutritionist at Amrita Hospital. And I think nowadays in our scenario, especially we women, there is a lot of focus which is centered around nutrition. What we eat, how we eat, when we eat, and there are loads and loads of podcasts all over the social media. It's like we are just asking if, okay, we are having some inflammation, some chronic pain, then we are checking with our family or sisters or friends, okay, what to eat, okay, I'm having a pain in this thing, I'm having pelvic pain, So I think almost everybody has become half a doctor, which is so true. And thanks to social media and podcast, and we suddenly think, okay, we are going to eat this, we are not going to eat this. And majority of the diseases, it depends on the right nutrition, especially in the postmenopausal or these type of scenarios. So I want to know that what should be the factors which go when a woman is planning her diet and she should be consulting a nutritionist. Is it okay? Because generally we think that we know most of the thing. And why to visit a nutritionist for that matter?
Absolutely correct. Very well asked, and it's a very valid question. With a diet transition that is happening in India, what we are seeing there is a change from a regular, seasonal, local foods to a ultra processed or maybe a hype by international market. We are trying to cope up that. And for example, flax seeds, which were ulci, right? Nobody was eating, but suddenly when a flaxseed market emerged and social media influencers started talking about it, the cost of ulci also raised. So definitely what we need to do is to be grounded at our own Indian traditional food and avoid the ultra processed food. And when it comes to women, it's not about one day. Women undergoes a lifestyle changes. So life cycle, the needs and the requirements of nutrition is different. It doesn't start like at maybe elderly, it doesn't start at menopause, it starts as early as birth. So first 1,000 days being crucial and then reaching to the adolescent's life, right? And nowadays adolescents are very active, are aware, but the social media influencers really cause a trouble. Like in my clinic, where I see PCOS patients coming in with overweight, and when they are sent for lifestyle, and when they come from a gynecologist to us, they are already aware that they need to undergo a lifestyle staining. So to this population, the awareness is there. But on the second hand, the social media influencers bringing in eating disorders. Like I've been recently seeing a surge of these kind of patients coming to me following some Korean influencer and leading into a BMI of as low as 14. Right, which leads to constipation problems, which leads to a lot of other micronutrients disbalances. And anemia at this stage, because the world is combating anemia, and Indian diets, being vegetarian, even non-vegetarians, they don't get enough iron in the food. So you need to have a regular update and a regular preventive health checkup consults for these population also. And when these adolescents goes to their universities outside to reach, their food totally changes to ultra processed food. Yes, during pregnancy, that's the most healthiest time a woman is following a diet, because the entire family focuses on her. But the moment the birth of the child happens, in lactation, where the nutrition requirements are even higher than the pregnancy requirements, the nutrition goes for a toss, right? They would not follow any kind of a nutrition because it was only needed till that. And this is the, like I would say, a base for their healthy aging. Calcium requirement to prevent osteoporosis is needed at this phase only. Vitamin D requirements are definitely there at this age only. And when it comes to peri-menopause and menopause, they're only consulting their mothers, they're only consulting their mother-in-laws. And every mother or a mother-in-law would say, we have also gone through it. What is so special about it?
That's so
Whereas now the lifestyle is changing. Women is coming into a workforce, and she is also eating easy to convenient food. So that is also making their gut compromise, which would show in their elderly ages. The requirement of probiotics is also increasing because their gut health is getting compromised. So at perimenopause, they are bothered on their phytoestrogens, the calcium, the vitamin D, the iron, folic acid. These are few key nutrients. And then comes the protein also, right, which is very, very important, and specifically important for an elderly population because their muscle mass and leading to sarcopenia. That is, and they don't know how fast their muscle mass is going to dip down when they're going to lead to 60s. So giving them appropriate diet and not being dependent only on supplementation, but trying to achieve through their natural diet is also possible. And education and awareness is the need of an hour. For
Very well said, Dr. Charu. I think it's the right combination, and at different stages of life, with whether it's protein, whether it's fat, whether it's carbs, so how to take everything in the right proportion and the right combination, and not getting overly dependent on the supplements which we have in plenty in today's scenario, and also not trusting much of word of mouth advices, free advices. It's better to visit a doctor and consult them rather than actually thinking what we are doing properly, because the other person is also doing the same and we are in the safer hands. So I think now I'm coming to Mrs. Seema Wilson, who is a general manager of patient care in Pacific One Health. So Mrs. Seema, I really want to know, because from generations, women, they don't get in that comfort zone, or they don't have that sort of feeling where they feel comfortable going to the healthcare hospitals and visiting doctors. And they find certain inhibitions because things, whether it's concerning their internal issues or maternity issues, it's something very, very private. So they want that comfort zone. So I just want to know what exactly are the things which you are introducing in your facility, in your center, which are making them comfortable. And here I would like to give you a small example. As a part of HEAL Foundation, we have taken this mobile health clinic vans to the hills. Especially you have those areas where even primary healthcare center facility is not available for miles. Forget any hospitals over there. We are talking about, inside the hilly terrains. So, and the pleasant surprise was that women turnout was more than 40%. And they were all coming out, and they were all, trying to become aware what exactly is the issue, is everything okay, and they're, trying to, so this is a sudden change which I have started noticing in the rural population of women, if you ask for, and they are also becoming aware, or they want to have a proper checkup. It's not that, they are being ghar pe and whatever is being told to them, they should be happy and satisfied. So I just want to know your opinion, that what exactly your views are in.
As per my view, the women healthcare in the present scenario does not fail because we have a lack of healthcare facilities. We have the lack of hospitals. But the women healthcare in India, especially, I want to say, because it is failed. Because our healthcare, system is not designed as per the woman, the centric, the care. And the main problem is when the women are approaching to the hospitals, they are not being listened, properly. Their symptoms are being ignored. And in our healthcare system, the woman health is treating like in a silos. Like if you say, if the adolescent with the problem of anxiety and the depression sort of things goes to the doctor, they never bother to just focus on the PCOD and the because the issues. Sometimes the adolescents is being transferred or the referred to the psychiatrist department for the counselings. But the scenarios which is affecting their personality, which is the PCOS and the PCOD, it is being ignored because the doctors are not listen them properly, and there is no continuity of the care, and the stages in the woman life is vastly the changing from the adolescent to the pregnancy, then the postmenopausal, and then the lot of the pregnancy issues are there. And just because of this silos, the problem, because our healthcare is divided in many departments. So the women's are being the shuffling between the gynecology, between the general medicine, like after 60s or 70, whenever the woman goes, they've been referred to the general medicine without, considering their continuity of the care and their, the diagnosis of the heart, the elements or the endometriosis, which is affecting their life so badly. So what our Pacific One Health vision is, that our vision is the patient-centric approach. We want to give every person a personalized care. Most of the hospitals, they don't have a privacy sort of setups, So the women are scared in sharing their sexual, the histories, their reproductive problem, because there is no privacy. Other patient is sitting outside, the door is open, there is no breastfeeding rooms, there is no play area. So they have to take care of child also, and they have to give their histories also. So the privacy is not there, silos problem is there. So the women healthcare is, wandering amount, between the department to department. So this is our vision in the Pacific One Health, that we want to give every woman a personalized care. We just try to give them a dignified care. So every woman will be taken care of, the separately precision sort of care, and will take a comprehensive, and that is the demand of the current scenario. Even our healthcare also, they have to develop a lot of the menopausal clinic, adolescents clinic, and they should give a one care coordinator which should guide the total health journey from the 16 years till the 70 years. So the continuity of the care will be there, and the up and downs of the woman life can be captured, and we can make a good the clinical pathways for the one woman. That is our vision in the Pacific One Health, that whenever the women will visit us, we just give them a one care coordinator, and we try to make their proper the history from the top to the bottom, and the comprehensive, not only the physical, but we try to cover their physical, mental, and the social. So, and even the nutritional part also. So the comprehensive, holistic care approach we try to give to every woman who will visit to the Pacific One Health. So that is my, the views about. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, that's quite a vision and insight, because what you're talking about, dedicating the entire corridor for the cause of women, where
Exactly,
they catching them young, like in their
adolescence
adolescence age,
yes.
and till their elderly.
It should be, the care should be
age, yeah.
dignified.
So
Yeah.
that feeling of comfort, that feeling of privacy, it
Yes.
speaks volumes, because we still have some hospitals which are totally dedicated to women, and
Yeah.
women feel very comfortable and
Cloud
secure.
nine and,
yeah,
Can
going
I
over
just
there.
add, it's a very
Yeah.
nice concept.
Yeah.
And also, like, there's a common saying, no, if you want to educate a nation, educate the women. So if you actually educate the nation, women, about the healthcare needs, about preventive health checkup, ultimately it's going to be, she's the provider.
Yeah.
She's going to lead to lifestyle changes.
She's
So
the main functional
absolutely.
unit. Which,
And multitasking.
You know, that-
Yeah.
From the
Healthcare
starts
should
to
be
the-
diverted from the curative to the preventive and
Absolutely,
promotive,
absolutely.
not only the curative.
Because education should start from each woman from the house. Then
Exactly.
only the house is okay, then the country is okay.
That's what, ma'am, as I was telling the example that we have seen at the rural households, you know, women are getting more aware and,
Yeah.
you know, they have started thinking about themselves, giving that priority to themselves that, okay, I also come in first. My health is also important, as good as my child or my spouse or, you know, family members. So now we are coming to the most important part of women health, which is dealing with the loneliness, the mental anxiety, and mental wellness is so important, which I think hardly anybody else in the vicinity, in the neighborhood, even in the family, they understand. When women complain about their depression or things which affect them mentally, because emotionally they are more vulnerable, they are more susceptible. So we have Dr. Asha Diwan, who is Executive Leadership Coach, founder and CEO of MBS Wellness in Gurgaon. And she has dealt with so many such cases because you are also a therapist and a healer. So I want to know, besides right nutrition, your clinical approach, all these diagnostics happening, what are the tools and the ways you think are important in the wellness of mental being, because besides counseling we all know that you give them, you listen to their worries and issues, it is half
Sure.
problem sorted out. But what are the tools and the therapies which you use when a person goes beyond and she is not able to rectify at her own end? So I would like to listen to that.
So first of all, I'm so glad that right in the morning we are talking about women, yeah? And there is priority.
By the way, today is a World Healthcare Day also.
Great.
So this is the right forum and the right day to handle the thing.
I'm sure each one of us who's a woman here can understand that this priority gives us confidence. The priority that we're talking about, physical health, nutrition, and the emotional health, because I feel that emotional health of a woman always takes a backseat, right? If you see in a household, each one of you spoke about that how woman is the center of every house. But when have we bothered about the emotions that a woman is feeling, right? And in fact, everybody talked about how the nutrition needs change, right? The body is changing at every stage of a woman. But similarly, the emotions are changing at every stage. And I would first like to address the loneliness that you spoke about. Yeah? So I feel that if you're talking about women post 40, there is a huge loneliness, and that is where the mental health really takes a toll, because they earlier were so busy, right? They were needed much more in the household. But suddenly now, children don't need them physically. Maybe spouse is also busy and they are feeling lonely. Now, there is one difference I like to say, that there is a difference between being alone and being lonely. So, in India, the social conditioning does not make the difference here. The moment we are alone, we feel we are lonely. No, if women learn to understand how to take, how to enjoy their own company, how to do things on their own, right? This issue of loneliness post 40, post 50, which is where perimenopausal hormones are going haywire, and that is when they need the maximum support. But why is that support needed? Because in our Indian culture, women have never done things alone, on their own. They've always traveled with the family, they've always done things with somebody else, but that is where we need to come to. And also, I think women feel a lot more guilty when they are doing things for themselves. Now, if these two things we address, that it's okay to do things for yourself, you can be selfless, you can be selfish, not selfless, right? And I think somewhere there is a help that is needed from men as well. So I see a lot of men saying that we always, we don't say no to our wife, we have never said no to her to doing something. saying that we don't say no and encouraging and pushing. There is a difference between the two, right? When you are so as women, we always encourage, push our children to do something. We can't say that I have never said no to my child to go and play, right? So there is a difference between the two. So I think women need to come out of the social conditioning that we have been, going through for such a long time. And that social conditioning is that we should not do things on our own. We should not do things. We should not be selfish. We should first take care of everything else and then come to our own self. If we take care of that, a lot of emotional and mental problems that women are going through will be taken care of. Now I'll come to answering your second question, which is therapies. There are a lot of therapies. Of course, there are cognitive therapies that are available. There are subconscious mind therapies as well. Like these days, meditative therapies, hypnotherapy. These are also alternate therapies that are available, which help women on a root cause level. Because one is counseling, other is taking out the beliefs, the limiting beliefs that we are carrying in our subconscious mind from our childhood, right? That conditioning that we've been carrying from our childhood, that we cannot do things for our own self. So those are the things that I use in my sessions, my therapies, because I feel that if there's something that is plucked out from the subconscious mind, then the change happens for good, for long term, right? And of course, there is physical health and mental health always goes hand in hand. So many of you have talked about counseling, right? Sudha ma'am started right from counseling, even ma'am was talking about nutrition and counseling. So I think if each of the physical practitioner, physical health person is talking about counseling, I'm sure that we are going to be able to
get
handle,
across any
yeah.
women, you have to start from counseling. That is
Absolutely,
the only way to go
absolutely.
ahead.
I just want to add here that I did a study of ICMR project of 1,000 women, and before doing the IVF and after doing, and it was a total scoring system was there, and we found when the patient has the extensive counseling, she had more uterine perfusion and implantation, and the pregnancy rate with IVF increased. So counseling is the entire bone,
It's the mantra. It's the mantra
backbone
how
of
to
the reproductive medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Devan. I think being alone but not lonely is something very important, where women, they have to understand, they have to be happy in their own skin, they have to become their own friends rather than looking forward to outside company. I think which requires a lot of social conditioning, because that's for generations we have conditioned in a certain way. And of course it's a paradigm shift also, but that will speak volumes when we are treating women for their mental, emotional, and of course everything manifests in itself in the physical form, because majority of the diseases are psychosomatic. So if we can deal at that level, and we include all these hygiene factors, whether it's meditation, yoga, and early screening of things, I'm sure we are going to be in much better health. And if we are in better health, then the entire nation is in better health, you see. Thank you so much.